a quorum, so the action that we take will be a communique from the chair. At this point, Ms. Barclay, let's start with item number 1.
Meg Barclay, CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the proposed Fifth Amendment to the Earthquake Disaster Assistance Plan for the Laurel Canyon Commercial Corridor.
Okay, on item 1, we'll adopt the CLA report as a communique from the chair. That brings us to item 2.
Item 2 are reports from the CRA and the CLA on a resolution relative to preparing an amendment to the redevelopment plan for the Los Angeles Harbor Industrial Center redevelopment project area.
Okay, on item 2, as a communique from the chair, we will adopt the CLA report. You know, Ms. Barclay, you may want to read just a little slower.
Okay. I can try.
I'm stalling for Mercedes.
All right. Item 3?
Just read slow like that. No, go right ahead.
I could spell it out.
Oh, Mr. Cardenas might be a lifesaver today, so if you could just read item 3. Oh, we were going to continue item 4.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask some questions so when they come back.
Oh, okay, fine, I got you. So item 3?
Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer relative to an environmental action and restructuring an existing loan with Urban Housing Communities, LLC.
Okay, on item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report, again as a communique from the chair. Even though we are going to continue item 4, I'd like for you to read item 4, and Mr. Cardenas has a few questions about it, so when they return, so he can ask the questions now, and when we do hear the item, they'll be prepared to answer it. So, item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CAO relative to the expenditure of up to $1 million from the CRA Land Acquisition Fund for acquisition-related expenses for Marlton Square retail area properties.
Okay, do we have any representatives here?
The land acquisition.
Oh, we do. We have a representative here from the CRA?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're a lifesaver. Come on, sit down. Take a load off. Identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Al Jenkins, Project Manager for the Community Redevelopment Agency.
Okay.
Good. Mr. Gardner.
Are you familiar with the Land Acquisition Fund?
Yes.
Okay. And the Land Acquisition Fund, the original purpose or scope of it was generically what?
Well, it was for the agency to purchase land in South Los Angeles, land that we did not have funds to purchase otherwise.
Oh, okay. Because my understanding is that your department said that the original purpose was to do exactly that, but that it would be available citywide. That it would be available citywide for citywide projects throughout the city, not just in South LA.
Okay.
Can you help out here you know about the Land Acquisition Fund?
Lisa Johnson-Smith, City Administrative Officer. There is a shortfall in the Land Acquisition Fund.
Yeah, it's usually the case. We never have enough money to do everything we need to do, but okay, let me get to the point. When this item is going to be put over, but since the Land Acquisition Fund is involved in this particular project on item 4, and apparently according to the notes that I have, that should we move forward with item 4 and the proposed money from the Land Acquisition Fund to be utilized for this particular project, that the Land Acquisition Fund amount will be depleted. In other words, we'll have allotted / used up the Land Acquisition Fund as it stands.
Yes, there are 2 items pending today's committee, the Wilmington Plan Amendment and this one.
Okay.
And if both of these items are approved, there will be no more funds available unless the agency identifies additional funds.
Okay. Now, what I want you to come back with is I want your department to explain to us which projects accumulated the amount of money in the Land Acquisition Fund, which projects were allotted money, which projects have money committed, and therefore, as a result of that, we've used up all the money in the Land Acquisition Fund as it stands today. I know that we can add more money later, but I'm talking about as it stands today. Okay? and I want a breakdown as to whether or not the Valley got money from the Land Acquisition Fund, the San Fernando Valley, not the San Gabriel Valley, the San Fernando Valley, and also, if so, if it did get money, which projects and where? Because, Mr. Chairman, it was presented to me that the Land Acquisition Fund was to be available for appropriate projects throughout the city. And I want to know what exactly we did with it.
Okay.
The agency is preparing a report, which they should be coming out with shortly, that's going to talk about the overall land acquisition fund, because it was a 2-year demonstration project. They're going to talk about just how the funding went, where the funding went, and if there's a recommendation whether it should be continued or not.
That's nice, but I want to know those specific questions when we're dealing with this item number 4, which I will hear when, next week, the following week?
Probably 2 weeks, because next week we're off. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming. Mr. Cardenas has stated his questions, and when we do hear this item within the next couple of weeks, I'm sure you'll be prepared to respond to them. So anyway, have a happy Wednesday. So we will continue item 4. We have just been joined by Ms. Perry, and that's a really nice jacket that you have on. Ms. Barclay, item 5.
Where I bought it?
I like it.
No, can I tell everyone where I bought it?
Yeah.
All right, this is why you need to patronize the farmer's market on Thursday afternoon from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. I bought it at the farmer's market right in front of our own city hall. Okay? It's recycling dollars in the community.
The one, you right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can buy clothes on there, too.
Farmer clothing. All right, item 5. That looks nice, though, seriously.
Thank you.
Item 5.
Thank you.
Item 5?
Item 5. Item 5 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO relative to various actions necessary to implement existing and newly awarded lead-based paint hazard grants.
Okay, we now have a quorum, so on item 5, we will adopt the CAO report, and Mr. City Attorney, if we could just, on items 1 through 3, if we could deem them as a vote of the entire board, unless, committee, unless a member has a problem. Question on that.
If Ms. Perry...
Okay, Mr. Cardenas has a question on item 5.
On items 1 through 3.
So who do...
Go 1 through 3?
Well, we do 1 through 3, and then we'll, on item 5, please come forward.
Just on the record.
Morning.
Morning.
Mr. Cardenas has a question.
Yes, thank you. On item 5, which has to do with the lead-based paint hazard grants, it appears that based on the breakdown information we have, certain parts of the city were able to utilize these funds better than others. What do we attribute that to? Like one district, council district, got 29 units were positively affected by this. Another district got 51. Another district got 53. Another district got 67. And it seems like 5 or 6 districts are about at the 30 units and above. 3 of them are 50 and above. But then you got one district has only 2 homes or units. Another district has 1 unit. Another district has 1 unit. Another district has 2. My district has 1. Another district has 1. One district didn't utilize it at all. And another district has 4.
Correct. One of the criteria, my name is Lisette Romero Martinez, and I'm the manager of the program. We have nonprofits that are hired and contracted to do the outreach within the areas, and they're following the SCEP list. For this particular time, it seems like the SCEP inspection was not happening in District 6 and 7, so they were not referring as many units. And in the valley, we find a high amount of housing that doesn't contain lead, which is good news. Lead was very expensive paint back in the days. They used to sell it as, one of the best paints ever. And in the valley, a lot of our housing stocks in the valley were painted with the lesser paint. And what we find is that we're finding a lot of homes within the valley that they don't have any lead. In the other districts, we have multi-units, as in District 1, 8, and 9, we have, like, in one building, 20 units, so that bumps up our numbers.
Okay. Let's get back to the outreach. It's nice to know that in the valley, they use cheaper paint, thank God. They didn't have lead or nowhere near as much of the lead content as was allowed before. Was it 1978, I think it was?
1978, correct.
That's nice to know, but still, what is the makeup of the outreach and what not-for-profits and where are they located?
For that, in the valley, for District 6 and 7, we have hired Pacoima Beautiful, who's doing the outreach for that area. I think they have gone through a lot of transition within a new administration. They have a new ED, and they were identifying themselves as well to see what roles they were going to be playing within the community. In our program, they did a lot of education. That was one of the best things within the valley. They went into the child care providers, CCRC, and then elementary schools and primary schools. Their role primarily for this grant was mostly education more than bringing units to our program.
So Pacoima Beautiful was the main outreach in the valley?
Correct.
Mhm. And when are you going to be, or is there even a need to continue with outreach? Did we deplete the money? We're waiting to find out if we're going to get more money? What's going on?
We got new funds. We got $7 more million, and at this point, we have the housing study. What's it called? The RFQ? The RFQ is out, and then we're waiting for everybody to respond back to us by March 17th to go through the process and see which CBOs have been applying for our program to do the outreach.
Okay. Well, before you leave the room, Macaria, if you could give Macaria your card, because we want to find out who's been responding to the RFP in the Valley. Because Pacoima Beautiful is a great organization. There's also another organization that's very involved in doing outreach and actually has some contracts with the city and seems to be doing a good job.
Which one's that?
Icon?
Oh, yes, I know them. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Then on item 5, we will adopt the CAO report. Item 6.
Item 6, reports from the Community Development Department relative to the results of the City Charter Section 1022 review for city loan to Valley Economic Development Center.
Okay, on item 6, we'll receive and file the CDD report. That brings us to item 7.
Item 7 is a motion, Huizar Reyes, relative to direct tenant notification of the city's systematic code enforcement program inspections.
Okay, without objection, we'll adopt a motion on,
Card.
oh, that is from Jim. You have Jim Clark on item 7? I thought that was public comment. I'm saving you, Chuck, to be the closer. Okay, good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Jim Clark, Executive Director for the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. I just want to make a couple of comments on this. I'm wondering why this would be necessary at all. There is notification right now where notices are posted on buildings to notify tenants and owners that these inspections are coming down. Also, our members are trained in our training to go door to door to check with tenants prior to inspections to see if anything needs to be done. The last thing our members want is to have the inspectors come back, because every time they do, they will get charged $201.50 if they, get caught with having to do more things in order to comply with, the initial inspection. So the first thing they want to do is make sure that all the tenants are aware that inspections are coming down, because they will be going into their units. They also want to know exactly what needs to be fixed prior to the initial inspection. So my comment here is I don't know why a direct notification through the mail would even be necessary, and it would probably be very, very costly to the housing department. With that, thank you.
Okay, you know what I'm going to recommend that we move this, but Jim, maybe you should have a discussion with Andrew. Can you
Anybody? I have a question for the housing department, by the way.
come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Morning.
Okay, thank you. Whenever I see that we formally put additional requirements in a process, I immediately think of the liability and the quandary that we find ourselves in when it's their word against ours. Say you have to, I think they have to leave a notice, one of these requirements, leave a notice at the doorstep of each unit that it's going to be inspected, and then I guess something in the mail, which is above and beyond what is currently required, right? Whenever that happens, you know, the inspector shows up and they say, who are you? Well, I'm an inspector. I do the SCEP inspection. Yeah. Okay. So? May we do the inspection? No. Well, weren't you notified? No. What do we do?
Well, you raised the same question that I have been mulling around. I too worry a lot about liability. I don't think in the 5 years that I've had the pleasure of working with you all that I've ever said to you, I don't think we should do this. But I don't think...
You always figure out a way to do it. Make it work.
But I don't think we should do
Wait
this.
out.
It is not because the issue of notification and outreaches is important. It is very important. But the issue is, how do you do it in the most effective way? Not only effective so that people get notice and know their rights, but effective...
Hold on one second. Does everybody at the table agree that if somebody's going to get an inspection, they should know that they're going to get an inspection? Does everybody agree that's cool? I mean, that's
Certainly,
the thing?
but
This is where they live, right?
Yeah, certainly,
Okay.
but I think that they do get ample notification.
But that's my point.
We totally agree.
So I just want to make sure that, because a lot of times whenever you're here, there's usually about 100 people with T-shirts, and they want to throw rotten tomatoes at you, okay? So I just want to make sure that people understand that you're with the apartment association, and you're cool with the fact that, and respect the fact and appreciate the fact that people should get notice if somebody's going to go into the place where they live and inspect it, right? You agree that, okay.
Now they're going to throw the tomatoes at you when you go outside. They're lining up right
I
there.
saw them out there, too.
Tell them I agree with you, and then they'll throw them at me.
This is the issue we face. Okay, one, the way that data is collected in the city is by address,
Okay.
right? And when a landlord registers their unit, both for SCEP and for rent, they list the number of units. They don't list who the tenants are, or if it's A, B, C, D unit, or 1, 2, 3. They don't do that. To do that for almost 800,000 units would be unbelievably costly, and I don't think that the cost-benefit analysis gets us too much, right? We would actually have to completely redo all of our systems, hire more people permanently.
Just one thing at all. You'd have to talk with ITA on how you're going to implement that kind of database.
Correct.
And then keep the database current, et cetera, right?
And charge an enormous amount of money to do that would go to the landlord and the tenant, right? Because that's how this is all paid for. After we would do all that, right, then you'd have to upgrade it and enforce it every year for a problem that I'm not sure is so immense. Now, it's not that I don't think that everyone should be notified, but I do think that another way we're handling it by working on the first citywide outreach program and responsibility program to both tenants and landlords through media, through all kinds of ways, is a better way. It's more cost effective because we know that tenants move on average every 3 years. So you need constant education. That's why we've come and have task forces and have all these things with both landlords and tenants to make it work. What I would rather see, perhaps, is have another discussion, certainly with Mr. Reyes' staff. They know how we feel about this. We've talked to them. But we'd like to have another talk with Mr. Wisad's staff about how to bring in their real concerns, right, what's really underlying this, with what we already have, because I don't see how we can afford it.
Well, let me jump in at this point. What I recommend we do, because this is a very good discussion, and Mr. Cardenas, I'm glad that you raised the point, and Jim, you know, you came here and we don't have people throwing tomatoes at you, and you made a good point. But I want to have Mr. Reyes here when we have this discussion.
Yeah.
So what we'll do, no, it makes sense though, because I would have moved this out. We will continue this item until we know when Mr. Reyes is going to be here, and then we'll discuss it so that we can, you know, see how he feels about it. We bring up these same points. It just makes sense to me.
But thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with that. But also what I'd like to ask of the department and also the apartment association, if you would like to please forward some information to the members of this committee, but more specifically to Wisar and Reyes, the makers of the motion, and let them know not whether or not we should do it, but let them know in order to do this, these are the kinds of things that we're going to have to fortify ourselves with. For example, I don't think that Wisar and Reyes realize the amount of, and just like me, I just assumed that if they're in a program, everybody has the person's name and the exact unit number and address. Well, you're letting us know the department doesn't. Obviously, there's reasons why they don't need that information. And so far, it's not an issue,
That's right. No, it's not. Not in any way that would justify this.
Exactly. So the thing is, what I think is going on here is, it sounded like a simple thing to help decrease the number of complaints and individuals who legitimately, for some reason, are at a loss for why they didn't realize they were going to get inspected, right? And then they're in a quandary, they don't want to let the inspector in, and they got to send them back, it's another $201 per inspection or whatever. It seemed pretty simple on the surface, but I think it's important for the department and also the association to explain not whether or not we should do it or not, but say, if we do this, understand, these are the kinds of implementation requirements that we're going to have. And also
But also, what is being done now to notify
Yes,
tenants?
exactly.
Because there are some things in place that do notify them.
Exactly. And also, my last question to the department is, how many, are we having a big problem with complaints? I mean, do we have some complaints? I'm sure nothing's perfect.
Well, there are always complaints, and what ends up happening is where you have a small percentage of landlords that are uncooperative, and it's a small percentage, right? But that also tends to be the area where the conditions will be the worst because they're uncooperative on lots of things. Right? So that's where you would have that problem. So I would rather focus in on that issue of how do you deal with a small percentage of problem landlords rather than imposing this on the
800,000 units.
That this is, it would be unfair to characterize the landlords in that way. It's not true. But there is a small percentage, but you know, I'm talking 3%, not, you know. But I do see Mr. Wisar's staffer here, and so she and I have known each other for a number of years, and I think that we can sit down and have a talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, then on item 7,
Thank
we'll
you.
continue that item. Could you read item 8?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 8?
Item 8 is a motion, Rule Reyes, relative to developing a strategy to apply for funding from the Hope 6 Federal Housing Program for redevelopment of public housing. We recommend this motion be amended to indicate that the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, rather than the Los Angeles Housing Department, be requested to report as they're the department that administers this program.
Move as
Okay,
amended.
then let's adopt that motion with the amendments. That brings us to item 9. It is my understanding that Ms. Perry has some amendments or a motion. So if you could just read item 9.
Item 9 is a motion, Garcetti, Perry, Rosendahl, relative to the requirements of new emergency shelter grant funds provided through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009.
Ms. Perry?
I'd like to make a motion directing the Los Angeles Housing Department to continue to provide oversight over the stimulus emergency shelter grant consistent with the ESG entitlement to include fiscal management, including fund allocation and disbursement, program oversight, including accomplishment data reporting, administrative oversight, including consolidated plan fund schedules and amendments.
Okay, then, without objection, we will adopt the motion as amended. Okay. That brings us to public comment. Chuck Tinnen, thank you for being patient. I told you you were going to be the closer today.
Give it to me. I know you do. Yeah. Yeah, okay. It's all about
Okay, Chuck, go on.
Good morning, committee members. A stimulus message to this Economic Development Committee for the people of our city. Can you imagine our city budget deficit will reach $1 billion over the next 2 years? That's 14% of the entire city revenue of $7.1 billion. Can you imagine it getting much worse? The U.S. trillions in debt, our city $1 billion in debt, and what about the people? Will they have anything left to survive on? The national economic turndown is sucking out our city's existence and dragging the people down with it. You can thank those greedy people on Wall Street that squandered our monies and our lending institutions that we entrusted with our money. In these times of uncertainty and fear, all of us face the loss of our savings, and we the people will have to pay for it. The list includes loss of jobs, higher taxes, loss of housing, foreclosures, evaporating home values, ailing health care, and a devastating economy. If we don't try to mend it now, it will swallow up this city and drown all the people that live in it. Noah had the right idea when he saw a disaster coming. He built an ark. He put his family and his life savings on board and sailed away to a safer environment. We don't need to have to sail away, but what we need to do is turn this city around by building an ark that is large enough for all of us to ride out this economic crisis until the waters subside and the return of our city's economy. We can do it, we can survive because we're Angelinos. This city's facing 15 economic pitfalls. I'll read you two of them. Economic housing loss and foreclosures, economic job loss. In conclusion, let us pray and hope that our city council leaders in their mission in Washington, D.C., get some economic stimulus money that's much needed, especially for housing in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
By the way, Ronald McDonald says he loves fishing and he wants to help kids on programs. And I took a picture with him, the real McCoy, the one that's on TV.
Okay, Chuck. Where'd you get your thermal shirt that you have on?
This one?
Yeah, the one that you're wearing now.
Well, the Honorable Herb Weston on his project saved.
So you got it from me. Okay, thank you, Chuck.
Okay. And you know why I wore it today?
Because it was chilly this morning?
Well, even the city attorney there, they make their comments there, but I says I wore it because the ladies like it.
Oh. My kind of guy. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this
No, sir.
committee?
No, sir.
Then
Let's
this
hope not.
committee's adjourned.
I did not mean to do that. I just didn't.